Welcome to the Selling Show, where we unpack, repack, and break down exactly how CEOs, founders, and senior executives sell their ideas, point of view, and personal brand to the people who matter most. This is your host, David Newman, and you are in the right place if you want to build market eminence, amplify your influence, and attract high-value prospects, investors, partners, talent, and media opportunities with less chasing and more confidence. Let's go. Sales, that's the whole concept. That's the whole topic of the show. But you know what? Sales management, sales outsourcing, sales training, not so easy. Not so easy. Founder-led sales, you're the boss, you're doing all the selling. Well, that's going to hit a bottleneck. I have the man, I have the myth, I have the legend who's going to help you with this, Mr. Nick Loise. Welcome. Salesperformanceteam.com is your website. Great to have you on the show.
David, great to be with you, and wonderful to be with such an established marketer and salesperson yourself, right? I mean, your LinkedIn profile, everybody should emulate that because it is phenomenal and you do a great job, and this podcast is great. And you talk about something near and dear to my heart, sales first off and marketing second. So I love talking all things sales, and I think I'm just starting to get good at it after doing it for about 30 plus years. We're figuring it around the thing, and it's the toughest thing that we find with founder-led companies, of having to manage those salespeople, but also be the strategic CEO and the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and the chief bottle washer and all that. And if you're not managing the circus, no one's managing the circus. Or they could bring in a firm like ours to help them manage it. We could talk through how to manage salespeople, how to not have your heart broken with hiring salespeople. Why?
Oh my gosh.
It's the number one thing that when we analyze businesses, I was in private equity before, the number one common denominator for small businesses that made it over $1 million in sales was they had at least one salesperson. So I would kind of implore everybody that listens that it's something they should think about doing.
Yes. Well, we're going to dig into all of that. But before we do that, how did Nick Loise become Nick Loise? What's your professional journey that brought you to the work that you're doing today? What were some fun pit stops along the way?
Love that question and love the way you phrased it. I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur and knew I was going to take the route of sales, right? Not my father or mother. My dad was a professional in the venture capital space and in the computer space. So I knew that that technology might be a play in it. But in the beginning, my family owned wholesale produce companies. And talk about the worst business in the world to be in, because as soon as you leave the docks, in those days, they actually left the docks. My grandfather started out on a horse and buggy that you had to sell what was in the basket, right? So they became peddlers, right? And I just kind of gravitated towards entrepreneurship and sales, and the other families in the neighborhood were all small businessmen. So I just kind of liked that space. Unfortunately, your mom and dad want you to go the corporate route first, right? So that was fine. So I worked for a Fortune 100 company, Marriott Corporation. I worked for some small businesses along the way, but really started out selling in the cubicle in the 90s in the financial services world, right? So, didn't know any better. They said, here's your script, there's your cubicle, and just follow this. So 100 dials before lunch, 100 dials after lunch. And then did some other stints in selling other products and services, got my MBA, then became a VP of marketing and business development for a large healthcare organization, and really started to build my marketing chops, if you will. Kind of thought I knew everything that I could learn. Started a marketing agency in 2006. Right. And so we were going gangbusters. We were heavy in home improvement, home services, professional services, healthcare. In 2008, 2009, I realized I wasn't the smartest guy in the world because there's a little thing called the financial crisis that kind of stopped everything and money flowing. So we kind of had to rebound that firm. Got into the digital space and the lead generation space. We sold it because we had some venture capital and some other partners. And in 2008 to 2012, 2012 to 2020 plus, I worked for GKIC, now called Magnetic Marketing. It was private equity owned at the time, and it was a marketing, education, and sales firm. And then we also got into some done-for-you services. That's where I kind of saw the need for this product, right? Which is what I do, because we would bring people in for workshops and they'd pay us $12,000 to $15,000 for the workshop. And we help them build out their sales management, their sales recruiting, everything they needed to manage the sales team. And so I saw that there was a need for this. And so I spun off, right? I had a good exit with the private equity company. Everybody was fair. And I was able to sell to the clients of that we service. So it was really, really good for me. Launched the company, unfortunately, COVID kind of slowed down the world, but it was an accelerator for us. I couldn't manage all the business that we had coming in, and still to this day, still are growing each and every year over year. But focusing right now on how to help entrepreneurs and small business owners on the sales side. That's a long answer to a short question.
No, it's great. I want to talk about outsourcing, delegating, all of this kind of thing, because there are three legs to the stool, right? There's the actual service delivery, whatever it is that we're doing. Mm-hmm. There's the sales, and then there is the marketing. And I have come to believe that when you're looking at scaling your business and making the business larger than yourself, making it scalable, making it saleable eventually, you get out of the delivery first, you get out of sales second, and then you get out of marketing last. Most people listening to this are like, Newman, are you crazy? You get out of marketing first. You hire the Facebook ads agency, you do this, you do that. Then you get out of delivery and you hang on to sales as long as you can. And Nick, I think you see the folly of that. I see the folly of that. I talked to a guy, this was literally a few months ago, $17 million revenue cybersecurity consulting firm. The guy says to me with a totally straight face, we hired our first full-time salesperson just a couple months ago. He said, you've been selling? He goes, yeah, I've got a Rolodex, I have a network. And this guy is a $17 million professional services, still doing founder-led sales. I'm like, if you had outsourced this, I don't know, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you'd be a $50 million company instead of a $17 million company. So talk to us about, between delivery, marketing, and sales, what have you seen be successful that founders are sequentially letting go? Do you like the idea of let go of delivery, then let go of sales, then let go of marketing? Or what would your recipe be?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think get out of delivery, right? Get out of the operations, get out of the hands in the in the product and service per se. Unless you're a lawyer, right? Or unless you're at that high level where you need to be moving caseloads. So I agree with you 100%. Second thing is you got to get out of sales as fast as you get out of delivery. For the one reason that you said real fast, but people need to hear it. If you want to have a product that you could sell for any exponential amount of money over revenue or over EBITDA, you cannot be the sole seller of the business, right? Because the buyer of the business can be like, well, it's based on you and your Rolodex, and the book of business is at risk, right? So you as the business owner need to be thinking of, what's my 3-year plan? What's my 5-year plan? How do I exit this business? And for many people, it's their best asset, right? It's one of their greatest assets. And we want to help you maximize your exit from that. So you got to get out of sales, I think, as fast as you get out of delivery. I think you stay in the marketing, because nobody could say, as long as you can. I think you get executors, right? You get people to help you with that, but nobody understands the brand story as well as you do. Nobody understands the probably the market as well as you do, because you were in the market for so long and you saw a need to kind of fix the market. So you understand the ideal customer profile, the avatar, whatever phraseology is in vogue that we're going to use this week, and what are their pain points, right? And how do you sell and communicate to those pain points? And then you need to be teaching your staff, your marketing staff, your tactical staff that, but you should be the strategist for as long as you possibly can, is my belief. And I also think that marketing people that don't understand the backstory of the company will just rush to tactics, right? But you need to be in the positioning. You need to be in that foundation of what's our positioning, what's our differentiation in the marketplace, what's our USP, right? Why do people buy us? What are our success stories? And what's that customer journey? But then I think, at 17 million, you should be thinking, I'm the CEO of this thing. Strategically, how do I grow this? How do I have department heads in? So when private equity comes to look at, because private equity is gobbling everything up in cybersecurity right now as we speak, when they come look at us, they want to know that there's a business there. They want to know that there's processes and systems, and this baby could run without me. And that's that's your role as the CEO of the business.
Hold on. This one is so good, even I'm taking notes. Listen, are you a CEO, founder, or corporate executive ready to fix your market obscurity problem and gain the market eminence you know you and your company deserve? Cool. Book your private Market Eminence Roadmap call with me, and let's see what might be possible for you. The link is simple. doitmarketing.com/call. See you over there. Now, I got to get back to taking more notes. Talk a little bit, because you mentioned this in your professional journey, about how to avoid disappointment.
Yeah.
The people that have been smart enough and brave enough to look to hiring outside salespeople, outsourcing sales, they say, oh my God, David, this never works out. And of course, it never works out because they've done it, I don't know, once, twice, 3 times. You've done it hundreds or thousands of times.
Yeah.
They don't know what they're looking for. They're looking at vanity metrics. They're looking at, I used to sell for Xerox. They're looking at, I was President's Club at so-and-so. And they don't have hiring criteria. They don't have performance criteria. And the salesperson gets no training. So here's the other, and we'll talk about this maybe in a moment. It's a separate question. My whole sales process is missing, funky, broken, and sad. If I just outsource it, though, the outsourced salesperson, they'll know what to do. They'll know what to do. They bring the magic sales dust. Yeah. So we have two sets of crazy. Let's talk about set of crazy number one. Why is recruiting salespeople so fraught with heartbreak?
For the reason that you laid out, right? Very astute. You as the business owner are looking at the wrong thing. 2 is you start to romanticize the candidate, right? You fall in love with them and, I love them. Or you said something very astute, which is, they sold for IBM. Or they sold for Google. And I'll use a quick story. We took on a client and he was a digital marketing agency. Great guy, had about a $5 million business in California, was lamenting because all of his salespeople couldn't sell. And he's like, the last guy, I hired him out of Google and he can't sell. I said, well, here's the deal. Nobody sells Google, people buy Google. So they're used to using the brand, right? They're used to using the name of the brand and like they come from Salesforce, they come from IBM, they come from Microsoft, whatever it is. They're not used to scrappy upstarts, right? And many of our clients are scrappy upstarts, right? Even at their 5 million, 10 million, they don't have the cachet in the marketplace that an IBM is. So one is you got to get somebody that understands this. You want to get in. And so the first thing we do is we say, who's your ideal salesperson profile, ISP, right? Just like we do a USP, what's your unique selling proposition and what's your ideal customer avatar. From that, we write a direct response ad that attracts the right people and repels the wrong people, right? So we don't want wrong salespeople into the funnel. Then we make them walk through a bunch of hoops. Send us a video. Don't just send me your CV. Don't just hit you on LinkedIn, apply. Read exactly what I'm telling you to do, and then send me the video. If it's an inside sales thing, send me, I want to hear your voice, right? So send me a message. Then we run them through the paces. We run them through a mock sales. Then we're big on various levels of psychographic and psychological testing, right? And whether you use DISC, I don't care, TTI, right? That will show you some stuff. It may not show you everything you need. You could use OMG, which is really, really good. You could use Sales Driver, which is really, really good. So we use all these different types of tests depending on the role, right? Whatever the role is, I'm going to have a different type of test. And then I always say to a business owner, if you're doing it yourself, don't do it. Let us do it. Or somebody else. If not, get somebody like David who understands your business but isn't emotionally attached to your business to interview the person at the end and just say, yes, he will do it, or yes, she will do it, or no, run away. This person's putting you through the paces. But salespeople are the best at finding jobs, right? So what do we say? 50%, this isn't my stats, this is Sales Loft and other people's stats out there. 50% of salespeople that are out in the marketplace do not have the skill set to be a salesperson. So that's the second part that we want to talk about. Yeah. The other thing that we find is we hire that person into a broken system, exactly like what you said. There's no processes, there's no system, there's no onboarding, and they're going to fix it. But they're they're getting into a car that's going 60 miles an hour down the road and they're still at zero, right? So here's what's going to happen. 90 days in, everybody's going to be upset. 180 days in, we got to figure out how do we get rid of this person? I would argue do it earlier, right? Or not hire them in the first place. But absolutely. Then we're kind of brought in as the firefighters and have to kind of either fix the problem with magic pixie dust, which isn't going to happen, or we got to go out and find new people.
Let me ask you, in the world of professional services,
yep,
especially more in the consulting, coaching, training, less so with legal and accounting where you need certifications and so forth, I think there's a big myth that, well, I'm never going to find good salespeople, Nick, because if they're a good salesperson, they would open a shop themselves. They would set out their shingle and they would be the consultant. They would be the expert. They would be the speaker and coach. There are people that just love to sell and they don't love to do the stuff that you and I are great at doing.
Amen, brother. You said it right. They won't do it, right? If you think of a true hunter, the hunter doesn't want to get into deliverability of the executions, right? Yeah. They don't want to do, like you said, the deliverables. They don't want to be in that. They want to go find the logo, find the company, find the new customer, bring them in and throw the file, cash their commission check and move on. Now I'm simplifying it, right? More than they are, but they don't like to do that. They're not good at it either, right? So the fear is that they're going to come in and learn and then set up their own shingle. They're not. And I'm sure you see this too, David. There are some organizations, and this is a bone of contention that business owners need to get over, that a really good salesperson might make a little bit more than you do, right? And you'll be upset about that, but you realize that they're building your asset, and your asset is something you're going to sell, and that's going to give you 10 times more, if done right, 5 times more, 3 times more than this person's ever going to make for you. So give them everything they want, keep them going, and help them build up their asset, and try to clone them, right? Don't just, one is a dangerous number in business, so have 2 or 3 or 4, but don't be afraid of it. And they aren't gonna, there's some great salespeople out there. We just hired one for a client that does a phenomenal job in a coaching space, right? And all she wants to do is sell. All she wants to do is sell.
Yeah.
It never is going to want to be on stage giving speeches, doesn't want to do the hustle and grind like we do every day of growing the business. So it's never should be a fear. The people that you work with kind of have to get over that and realize that that's a myth. That's a self-professed myth.
I want to talk to you because you're great at doing this, and I know that you've worked with companies to help them do this as well. A lot of times, the sales challenge is that we are selling something that our buyers have totally commoditized. Oh, sales training is sales training. A million people do sales training. Marketing consulting. Oh my God, if I see another marketing consultant, my head's going to explode. So we need to master differentiation, positioning, distinction, all of these things. When you see a business owner that's running just another business, just another vendor, just another supplier kind of business, how do you guide them and advise them so that they can actually start to differentiate themselves, which might make the sales process easier?
Well, I think, we're going to tell them to read all your stuff, right? And study you and all the work that you do, first off. But
I like it.
I think, but you're spot on with that, right? I think that when it's just another or it becomes commoditized, the buyer of the services can only justify it through price, right? Because so what you have to do is give them the tools to fully understand what you do and why you do it and why you do it differently. And those tools are laid out in the body of work that you have, but it should be shock and awe packages, right? And not just the marketing pizzazz, but really have some level of IP that you put in place that nobody else could really quantify and also replicate. That's the most important thing. And, we used to say this all the time. You could line up 3 different deliverers of the business in front of a business owner, or 3 different business owners. One person's going to pick one person's going to pick another, one person's going to pick the middle one, right? So some of it's just going to be, I like this person, I get this person, I like their approach. But what I think, I wouldn't just rely on personality, right? Because that's a dangerous proposition. You really, as the business owner, if you're in this commoditized space, right? The marketing space, you and I grew up in that space, and it is getting commoditized, right? I mean, if I see one more 22-year-old kid that's going to give me 300 leads within 20 seconds, right? And then, tomorrow they're going to be a life coach, right? Well, until you've been beat up by life a little bit, then you could be a life coach to me. But, it's people, a mic and a camera, and now they're experts, right? And so you as the business owner have to have some level of discernment. And if they speak the language that talks about it from a professional perspective, right? What's your positioning? What's your unique selling proposition? That all the things that you talk about when you work with a client, right? So how do we? But as the business owner, if we don't know these things, we're going to just look at price and we're going to say, well, this person's doing it for 1,000. You're charging me 10,000. I don't know why you're different. And so therefore I'm going with 1,000.
I want to ask you about probably the poor redheaded stepchild of the marketing and or sales process, which is prospecting, lead generation. It seems, and it's funny because we go back years and years and years, and it's like, oh, there's this new thing. Don't worry, you no longer need to do prospecting. This is 2008. We're now doing inbound marketing. Inbound marketing. So thank you, HubSpot. Gotta love the team at HubSpot. They invented this term, inbound marketing. And then some people realize, oh, wait a second, inbound marketing is not cutting it. And then, outbound is the new inbound. It's like, okay, so now we're doing that. Now it's like, no. Now it's like outbound, inbound, outbound. Now it's like podcast guesting. And, we have to get people to raise their hands and do all this other stuff. And nobody wants to do old-fashioned direct to prospect, outreach, invitation, conversation, connection. How do you see the state of prospecting in 2025?
Well, I love your analogy, right? And we could probably take a step back and say and I love Aaron Ross, right? I don't blame him, but he probably ruined it all, right? Because he wrote predictable revenue. So now everybody's going to get SDRs, right? And so now an account executive doesn't have to learn how to prospect because he's just going to have a full day of calendar invites and people to talk to. And I think we're doing a huge disservice to the next couple generations of sales professionals because of the fact that they do not know how to prospect, or they won't prospect, or they can't prospect, right? Yes. And so you and I grew up in the age of carrying a bag, and you had to build your own pipeline. You had to build your own prospect list. The tools are much easier now to get information on that. That's good and bad. But I think that it's a sad state of affairs. And I think the sellers today, if people are listening to this that are in the sales side, that could figure out how to prospect, that aren't afraid of going, like you said, crafting good hooks and messages and having conversations with people and qualifying them to see if it makes sense for us to continue the conversation on both sides, and learning to build up that book of business, if you will, or that pipeline, whatever phraseology you want to use. I think it's a horrible disservice that we're doing to modern day sellers, right? And a lot of SDRs do not have the skill set to move into the AE role, right? Because they don't know the negotiation ploys, right? They don't just know the sales acumen that they need, right? So I believe that we will eventually go back, because eventually companies are going to look at the SDR role, BDR role. I'm old enough to know that they're called appointment setters, right? And I used to have them in my office, and they got paid almost minimum wage, and then they got a $25 to $50 bonus for every appointment, right? And they were in my office, and that's what they did all day for us when we had the marketing firm. Now we're calling them SDRs and BDRs because nobody wants to be called a salesperson in this world, right? So I do believe that you hit on a nerve of mine, because I do think we're doing a horrible disservice, and I think we'll eventually start getting rid of that SDR role because of the fact that we're looking at the economics of it and realizing it. Now, I don't think it's going to go with AI bots, right? I don't think that's going to be it, but we're going to have AEs that are filling their own pipelines and calendars. Now, maybe you could have one SDR that's servicing for AEs because the tools are better out there for them to do their research and that type of thing. Yeah, I do believe, I'd be interested to know your position. I think that role should sit on the marketing side versus the sales side, because they're getting so much great marketing intelligence for you that could go back to your marketers more so than the salespeople, because the salespeople are transactional. I'm pointing a finger and I got 4 back at me, so I'm not judging them, but they're in a transactional mode where marketing thinks longer term, right? They've got a little bit longer of a vantage point. Salespeople are, what's in front of me today? What can I close by this quarter, by this month, by this year, so I could get my spiffs and my commissions and my overrides?
Holy smokes, so much value in this episode. Listen, if you are loving what you're hearing, feel free to download, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to The Selling Show. Now, back to the interview. I want to go back to this concept of the founder-led sales. So let's say the founder, the CEO, they make a very smart decision to get out of founder-led sales, and they hire their first salesperson, or they outsource it with your team. Yeah. Now, let's say we have 2 or 3 sales people, sales professionals. The CEO still hasn't solved the problem, because now the CEO is no longer in founder-led sales. The CEO is now in sales management. So why is it critical to outsource sales leadership as well?
Well, for a number of reasons. One is you've just become a highly glorified sales manager, and you could do much better for the organization and for your pocketbook and for the economics of the company if you get out of that role, right? And be the CEO of the organization. 2 is it's a skill set that I'm not saying that CEOs don't have, but it's a skill set. It's much like when organizations promote their number 1 salesperson into sales leader, right? I know that that's going to flare out because because of the fact that it's just two different personality types, right? Because the sales manager is a coach. He's a mentor, right? Don't distill him into being a CRM jockey. He should be with his team on the road. If you have a field sales, and I do believe we're going to go back to field sales, right? In front of customers, coaching the younger staff or the less tenured staff, if you will, on deals and how to, move deals through the pipeline. He should be listening to calls if it's an inside sales or a Zoom environment where he's kind of then evaluating, right? You could put some of that through AI, but AI is going to not look at everything. And so that person really is a goal. He shouldn't carry a quota, right? He shouldn't be a player coach. Right? We don't put the head coach of the Florida Panthers on the ice, right? We didn't do that. We have a team, and everybody, he sees it from a vantage point. He also needs to be part psychologist, right? Because when you're dealing with salespeople, sometimes they get in their own head, so you kind of have to lift them up into that perspective. And so there's also things that they will never tell the CEO, right? But the CEO needs to hear. So you need that buffer of that, okay, here's what they're saying. Because one is, the CEO have a tendency, this person could control my livelihood, right? Or he could control my next promotion or things of that nature. So therefore, I'm not going to tell him if there's problems in the marketplace or if there's problems with our products and services. So it's wrought with failure from all angles.
You brought up a couple of great points there. I want to talk about, you call it value prop or offer or unique mechanism. I'm sure you come across companies that have a great product or a service, but they're selling it in some backwards, crazy, funky way. And you're like, no, that's not how people are going to want to buy this.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what's any good war stories or tips on offer engineering or just changing the premise of what people think they're buying so they get really excited and motivated to buy it.
So I think there's a couple of different things there, right? So it's the changing the premise, but also changing the way you sell it, right?
Yes.
And so a couple different war stories. One is we had a home service company, right? And they were excellent at what they did. Their Yelp reviews, everything was phenomenal, right? But they were battling it online, right? Because it was an inbound only shop, right? And they were battling it online for the lowest common denominator, which is price. Right. So you kind of have to go out there and teach them, like you teach, the use of testimonials, the use of different tools to position your company in the marketplace. The other thing we did with this company is we saw that although the consumer was calling in, there was two pockets that also derived a large book of business each. One was real estate agents, the other one was contractors. So we then hired outbound phone people, put them on, and just had them build up relationships and get business from those two items, right? So that's kind of the second part of your question. The first part of your question is you kind of look at the way that they're selling it just doesn't make sense, right? And some of it could be it's just the way that they did it. Some of it could be that they had a pivot during COVID, but now the world has changed, so they need to go back out into an environment of selling it in a proper way. I see a lot of this with SaaS companies because they become orgasmic about giving a product demo. But they do know upfront Q&A, right? No, they do know upfront discovery. They do know upfront education. So we had a SaaS company that was in the online education space, right? Well, I won't name names, but they had a great product, but they couldn't grow. So we changed the way that they sold. One is to educate people about the online education world and educate them about the information marketing business, educate them about how to position and market and those type of things. And at the end, our tool was the driver to get you to where you needed to go. Yeah. But they were just rushing to demos because that's all they knew. And the person was overwhelmed and they had all the features and benefits. And the salesperson, was a tech jockey and was enamored by it, right? And the person was just, She was a coach and she wanted to know where to put her learning platform, and how to get her new education up there and how to collect credit card payments, right? But we had to do some we had to kind of make it education based first and then move it into demos. So that's two examples. Hopefully they resonate with people.
Oh, for sure. And I think you just brilliantly demonstrated, Nick, how working with you is a very unique combination because you're the marketing guy with the sales brain and you're the sales guy with the marketing brain. And there's very, very few people in your business that bring both of those things together. A lot of other outsourced salespeople, outsourced sales leaders would just brute force the thing and they wouldn't think about, well, what's the marketing angle here? What's the premise of the sale? What's the offer? You can have the world's best salesperson with a sucky offer and it's going to be like dragging a bag of rocks uphill. Right? You have a great offer, an amazing offer, and an average salesperson, and you will set the world on fire.
I think too, and David, you probably get into this a lot with your clients and when people are come to you, is no one thinks through sales choreography. Right. And I think you kind of hit on that which is, how do we elegantly allow people to buy? Right. And it's not just how do we rush them through? Right. As we all want that. Right. They a credit card in hand. They're on the phone with us. First call. They're just ready to buy. Great. That's marketing's job. But there has to be some level of sales choreography. And there has to be I think you also hit on something which is, that has to be checked and balanced. I don't want to say every quarter because that's almost too much, but it should be checked and balanced every year to 2 years of saying, hey, are we selling the way that people want to buy today? I mean, you look at some organizations and some industries. I think the car industry's done one of the best of tried to repivot themselves, to reposition themselves, right? It was a horrible experience. Now they're making it into a much better experience. Not all of them, right? But there are some. And so I think you have to be a consumer of other people's products and services and learn from their sales process and their marketing process and then bring those to your organizations and test them or get a good partner like you.
Yeah. And you can also learn from the bad ones as much as you can learn from the good ones.
Amen to that, right? We've all seen that. Yeah. We've all seen that. And I think there's going to be a lot more bad ones because we're defaulting to AI. So in your inbox, every message is going to look the same, right? There's going to be no differentiation. We're offshoring our calling, right, to the Philippines and to Latin America and to South Africa. Nothing wrong with them, but it's just a different experience, right, than what you expect. And I think if you want to charge maximum prices, which I think you want all of your customers to do that, you have to really have a white glove experience. You really have to do that. We have a client that's in the professional services. I am just so impressed by the level of her delivery, right? So how she's kind of created her customer service experience, but all the stuff she's doing on the front end, right? And she's got social media down. She's got a client education down, and I think you have to kind of be a good student and look at all of that stuff and really use it to the best of your ability. I mean, I do a lot of work in the home improvement, home services, and they could learn. Right, they are still in Neanderthal stages, right? And brute force of this closer is going to sit in your living room until dawn comes in, and that's not going to work anymore in this day and age.
Amen. As we're landing the plane, I know people are going to want to get connected and stay connected to more Nick Loise brilliance. Where can we send people? What links shall we drop into the show notes?
Yeah, so sales pack, SALS. PACK sales performance team, kind of gets them into our email system. And then we give them a bunch of goodies, right? So I'm not a firm believer of taking. I want to educate, right? Just like you teach your people too. So they're going to get an ebook from us. They're going to get a number of different analysis that we've done. We've written some white papers. And then You can hit me up on the socials, right? I'm active on LinkedIn. We're active on YouTube, right? Nicholas Loise, Loise. Facebook too. Instagram is really just for the family, so it's kind of boring. You're going to just see pictures of my wife and I at dinner. But feel free to join me there.
Excellent. And all of those links will be directly under this episode at thesellingshow.com. Nick Loise, you are a rock star. I appreciate you. Thank you for all the value bombs and wisdom.
David, thank you. I mean, listen, you're a great coach. You're a great educator. You are a great consultant. There aren't enough of you in this world. So, keep doing what you're doing. Keep waving your flag.
And that wraps up another episode of The Selling Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, tell a friend, go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thesellingshow.com. See you next time.